How's it going, guys and girls? Hope you guys are having a great week. So it is that time of the month again, guys. It is time to talk about some of the biggest games coming out in March 2022. Now, if you thought that February was a busy month, wait until you look at March. It is absolutely insane, the amount of games coming out this month, which is why this month I'm actually doing a top 8 game releases coming out. So let's just jump straight in, shall we? Without further ado, here are the top 8 game releases in March 2022. Kicking us off at number 1 is Far Changing Tides. This is actually developed by Swiss developer Okomotive and published by Mixed Vision. It's actually a spin-off of the Far Lone Sails game, and it actually expands upon the desolate setting from the original. Changing Tides actually swaps the sun-scorched dusty plains of its predecessor for stormy skies and high seas. The game is an atmospheric vehicle adventure that follows the emotional journey of a boy and his ship as he embarks on a voyage to find a new home. Players will sail stormy waters, dive unknown depths, and explore forgotten ruins in a beautifully realized flooded world. With new environments, puzzles, and ship mechanics, your goal is to overcome the elements as the new protagonist, Toei, who awakens to find themselves alone, stranded in a flooded world. Sounds a little bit like Waterworld. You must navigate Toei on an adventure to traverse the ruins of a once great society in search of a new beginning. You get to captain your own ship, brave the high seas, and navigate intense storms. Along the way, you'll need to keep things functioning by unlocking parts, fixing faults, and searching the watery depths for precious fuel and salvage. The further you travel, the more you'll learn about your ship's fascinating complexities. Far Changing Tides looks really interesting. I didn't get to play the original Far Lone Sails, but I did hear good things about it, and I'm very interested to check out what this developer has coming in March. For those that are interested, this game is set for release on the 1st of March, and it will be available on the PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. The second game coming out in this month is Triangle Strategy. This is a tactical RPG developed by Square Enix and Art Dinked. The development is actually led by Tomoya Asano. That's the producer of the Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler games, and you can really tell from the art style and the premise of this game. The game actually takes place on the fictional continent of Norzelia. The story focuses on a new conflict 30 years after the Salt Iron War, a war between 3 countries of the continent, Glenbrook, Ace Frost, and Hyzant. The game follows protagonist Serenoa Wolffort, his childhood friend Prince Roland, and Serenoa's fiancée Princess Frederica S. Frost as they attempt to navigate their way through the conflict. The game is actually a turn-based tactical role-playing game in the vein of Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. The story scenes in between battle will directly affect the game flow, so the game presents the player with decisions with different values relating to morality, liberty, and utility, and decisions made do affect things such as which characters will support or oppose the player's cause, and will alter the course of battles and story scenes that become available. I did get to play Triangle Strategy, the demo, on the Nintendo Switch when that came out. Really enjoyed my time with it, and Triangle Strategy looks absolutely beautiful. I love the art style too. It looks really cool, and it is coming out on the 4th of March, and of course will be available exclusively on the Nintendo Switch. The third game coming out this month is Gran Turismo 7. This is developed by Polyphony Digital and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, and it will be the 8th mainline game in the series. It has been 9 years since the last Gran Turismo game, so fans of the series are clamoring to get their hands on the latest title. The developer promises that there will be 420 cars available in the game, 90 track routes, dynamic weather conditions, and it will include classic courses from GT history. So Pretty meaty game with plenty of value for money. The PlayStation 5 version of the game will also support ray tracing, 4K and HDR at a targeted 60 frames per second, which is fabulous for a racing game. Faster loading times, of course, thanks to the solid state drive. Adaptive triggers to finally control and feel the varied braking resistance for each car, so that's going to be interesting. Haptic feedback to feel the subtle bumps of the tarmac and the grooves of the curb. 3D audio will also be included, which will allow players to sense the positions of other cars and drivers on the road. The experience of this on the PlayStation 5 sounds like it's going to be incredible. So certainly if you do have a PS5 and you are very much into your driving and racing games, then I think Gran Turismo is probably one of your must-buy titles this month. And it's coming out on the 4th of March, and of course is going to be available on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. The fourth game coming out this month is Tunic. This is an action-adventure game developed by Canadian indie developer Andrew Soldice. One developer and published by Finji. Tunic is played in an isometric view from top down, allowing the player to maneuver their character, a very cute anthropomorphic fox, around the game's world, interacting with objects and fighting enemies. The game is structured very similar to The Legend of Zelda, with progress limited to certain areas of the game world until the player has collected a new weapon or ability for the fox to use. It's very obvious that this game is inspired by the Legend of Zelda series, and I love the art style. It looks really interesting. I have requested a review copy of the game, so fingers crossed I get to get a copy to get hands on and review this and play this for you guys. But for those interested, it's coming out on the 16th of March, and it will be available on the PC, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One. The fifth game coming out this month is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. This is an action RPG developed by Koei Tecmo Games and Team Ninja. Stranger of Paradise is set in an alternative dark fantasy interpretation of the setting for the original Final Fantasy game, with a group of people drawn in from another world. The main character is called Jack Garland, a man consumed by a need to destroy chaos. Stranger of Paradise is an action RPG in which players explore environments and fight monsters from the Final Fantasy series. Combat takes place in real time, with Jack being able to switch between two assigned jobs and use both physical and magical attacks. Once an enemy's break gauge is depleted, Jack can perform a finishing blow that crystallizes the enemy, allowing him to harvest them and restore a portion of his magic meter. Sounds a little bit like Sekiro Shadows Die Twice with regards to that stagger meter, which is interesting. And it is very obvious that this is developed by Team Ninja. The combat, the gameplay, very much shows that. So it looks really interesting. The game will also support 2-player cooperative play. So both myself and Edge are going to be showcasing this in our Wednesday multiplayer streams. I know this is one of Edge's most anticipated games this year, and I myself am very much looking forward to experiencing it cooperatively. Edge is much more of a seasoned Final Fantasy player, so it's going to be a really great experience for me to be able to experience that with him. For those that are interested, the game is coming out on the 18th of March, and it will be available on the PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One. The sixth game coming out this month is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. This is an action RPG first-person shooter developed by Gearbox Software and published by 2K Games. It is a spin-off in the Borderlands series and a successor to Borderlands 2 Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, which is one of my favorite DLC packs in Borderlands 2. It is set directly after this DLC, and like that expansion, the campaign is set within the world of a fantasy-themed tabletop RPG game. Tiny Tina will be its dungeon master, which sounds awesome, and she can change the game's world on the fly. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, players can actually create their own playable characters for the very first time, and the game features 6 different character classes. Players can also mix and match these skills for their characters. Of course, this is a Borderlands game, so players will have a large arsenal of weapons and firearms at their disposal, and for the first time in the series, players can actually wield melee weapons. The game will feature the same procedurally generated loot system from Borderlands, which is capable of generating numerous combinations of weapons and gear, and it can be played both in solo and also with up to 3 other players in online or local split screen multiplayer. Dante and I are really looking forward to this. We really enjoyed Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep. The writing, the humor was fabulous, so I'm very much looking forward to an entire game that's kind of along those sorts of styles and designs. I also like the idea of being able to completely create my own character in the Borderlands world, so that looks really interesting. And it is coming out on the 25th of March, and it will be available on the PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One. The 7th game coming out this month is Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This is a 3D platformer developed by HAL Laboratory and of course published by Nintendo. It's actually the 17th mainline installment in the Kirby series. 17 games, really? That's mad. But I've never actually played any Kirby games, so I'm very much looking forward to it. And this is actually the first 3D mainline game, which sounds amazing and looks amazing. The player controls Kirby in an adventure through a post-apocalyptic land called the Forgotten Land to rescue Waddle Dees kidnapped by a group of animals calling themselves the Beast Pack. To complete each stage and save the Waddle Dees, Kirby will use a wide range of copy abilities to help battle enemies and progress. We saw a gameplay trailer recently, and some of those copy abilities look insane. The ability to eat a car and drive around, the ability to become a vending machine and shoot cans of juice or cans of Coke looks incredible, looks insane. It very much does give me vibes of Mario Odyssey in its style and aesthetics, and of course this is Kirby, so a lot of the abilities he's going to have are going to be really fun and really funny. You can play this game in 2-player and in solo as well, so Dante and I probably are going to be picking up this game, checking it out, and we may well do a review discussion on it once we've beaten it. But it is set for release on the 25th of March again, and it will be available exclusively on the Nintendo Switch. And the final game coming out this month that I'm interested in is Ghostwire Tokyo. This is an action-adventure game developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda Softworks. The premise and the setting of this looks really interesting. Nearly all of Tokyo's citizens have vanished mysteriously, and otherworldly spirits known as visitors have invaded the city. Akito, the game's protagonist, is possessed by a spirit detective called KK, who, while having his own agenda, does grant Akito supernatural powers. Played from a first-person perspective, the player can use various psychic and paranormal abilities to defeat the ghosts and spirits haunting Tokyo. The combat director Shinichiro Hara described the combat as karate meets magic, which sounds awesome, as the player character does utilize hand movements inspired by Kujikiri hand gestures to cast spells. When an enemy loses most of their health, its core is exposed and the player can use takedown moves to destroy it, defeating the spirit. We did get to see some pretty awesome trailer footage recently, and we got a deep dive gameplay look at the game, which made me even more excited. I was interested in Ghostwire Tokyo, most definitely, but now having watched the gameplay, it looks like a lot of fun, and I'm very much looking forward to jumping in and checking it out. For those that are interested, Ghostwire Tokyo is set for release on the 25th of March, and it will be available on the PlayStation 5 and PC. So there you have it, guys. Those are just 8 of the biggest games coming out in March 2022. Pretty busy month, seriously. February and March have been utterly insane. My bank does not thank you. I am skinned. But yeah, so many games to play and just not enough time. But let me know what you guys think of this list and these games. Are there any of these games that you will absolutely be checking out this month? Any that I've missed that you think deserved a place on this list? Please do share those in the comment section below. Anyway, hope you guys are having a great week, of course. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye, guys.